For 40 days and 40 nights, the US Congress has flexed its power, the minority position of the Democratic Party, to halt the government being open, to halt the funding of the carnival of horrors of MAGA and Donald Trump. But last night, Donald Trump found the 8 collaborators he needed to reopen the government. He found 8 Democratic senators willing to go along with it. Donald Trump specifically found these collaborators. And keep in mind, 2 of these people, Durbin and Shaheen, will be retiring, and the rest of them don't face elections until 2026 or later. Now, at this point, you're probably really angry, and I promise we'll get to the part where we're going to get even with those 8 senators and this shitty leadership that got us here, but let's just talk about specifically of the reopening process. And if you can, please let me know below if you can see this video, because I think I've been shadow banned and no one sees any of my stuff anymore. So, we have a process. First, we had the cloture vote. That happened last night. This required 60 votes, which means the Republicans needed all 8 of those senators to vote with them because they had lost a vote, with Rand Paul voting against the cloture vote. Meaning no 60 votes on a cloture, the process stops. This is very important for what's about to come up. Now we go into an amendment process, and this could take really as long as Majority Leader John Thune wants. Then we have the second cloture vote, which means they need another 60 votes, which means if any of those 8 drop out, they don't have the votes and the process stops again. This means clearly that right now you should be picking up the phone, writing an email, sending a physical letter to bother the heck out of every single one of these elected officials. And now let's say the next cloture passes. Then all of this from the Senate needs to go over to the House, because they have to reconcile this through the reconciliation process to basically agree to the changes that the Senate has made on their side. And at the end of the day, House Speaker Mike Johnson can just say no. And I mean literally like no, he can just choose not to hold a vote on any of this. So this all means there's a lot of opportunities in the next days and hours to make sure that this stops, but it means you gotta do something. That means you need to call someone, you need to write a letter, you need to write an email, you need to bother the heck out of the politicians. And that brings us to our final point. How do we get even with the Caveful 8? Now, a lot of people think that the only way you can get even with a politician is by voting them out of office, but I'm happy to say that is not true, and there are way more petty and personal ways to go after them. For example, like removing them from all of their committee assignments, something that the Senate Minority Leader could do. But then you'll say to me, Rota, obviously Chuck Schumer isn't going to do those things, and I agree, which is why we should think about getting rid of Chuck Schumer. Because fundamentally, Chuck obviously can't do the job. He is unable to keep the caucus together because he's had 8 splitters, and we have to also assume if the lie narrative is true that he was very unaware of what was going on, then he obviously is oblivious to what is going on and is really just a bad leader. So right now we should be getting the remaining senators, not from the Caveful 8 and not Chuck Schumer obviously, to get on record saying that they want to challenge him for leadership, or who they think should challenge Chuck Schumer for leadership, and that he needs to resign from Senate Minority Leader. Further, for the rest of them, we need to be looking at recall elections. We need to get serious about putting the fear of the voter into these senators, because obviously they don't have it. Even more so, we need to start building up who's going to be the successor for each one of these Caveful 8, because we need months and months to build up people out of obscurity against these fossils that have been there for years and years, and some of them my entire life. See, the other day, winning on Tuesday, winning big for the Democrat, the biggest blue tsunami we've seen in ages, wasn't enough if we don't get rid of the shitty leaders who are still in positions of power that got us here in the first place. And right now, we had a sea change. We saw what the base wanted, and they want us to fight back against Donald Trump. And what those old fossils of politicians saw was they still think it's the 1979 and they're going to go golfing on the weekends with their Republican pals. And I'm sorry, Chuck, but it's the 21st century, bub.